think the connotation, the problem I've got with the connotation of spending is out of control. It's like you guys are finding things, new things to spend money on. That's what the connotation of that, and it's deceiving.
Well, actually, during the recession, after recession, state government services were cut back quite a bit because there wasn't as much revenue coming in.
Sure.
The amount of money that was going for education, it was prorated. They weren't getting their full amount. Social services were cut dramatically. You talk to nonprofits and providers of some human service programs. For a while there, 4 or 5 years ago, especially mental health services, they suffered a lot of cutbacks. And unfortunately, they're back in the situation right now. But
what was the mental health place? Janet Wallace.
Yeah.
I mean, that merged with, I think it's Rosecrans or something, because they just had to merge. There wasn't the money.
Yeah. So, in a sense that obviously you want to make government as efficient as possible, but people talk about the temporary income tax increase that was passed in 2011, pretty controversial.
Sure.
It basically went for two things. It went, one, to make sure that the state would pay its pension payments in full, which wasn't being done up until a few years ago, which allowed us to get in the situation. It also went to pay off the debt associated with those pension payments, and we also pay down the backlog of bills. So at one point in 2011, the state was $10.5 billion backlog of bills. At one point last year, we were down to $3.5 billion. So in any business, you have probably a 30-day payment cycle.
Sure.
A 30-day payment cycle for the state is roughly $3 billion. We were within paying our bills 30 to 60 days at one point last year. So that's where all that revenue went, okay? While we're in a fiscal crisis right now, in 2015, is because, as you know, the income tax rate went from 5% to 3.75% at the beginning of the year. That is a $4 billion hit to state revenues. So in a matter of one day, one fiscal year, we lost 25% of our revenue immediately. So if that income tax increase went to pay off pensions and pay down the debt, that money's gone. You don't have that money to pay off pensions and to pay down the debt, right? So that squeezes out everything else in the budget. So when you lose $4 billion in revenue immediately, you want to make government as efficient as possible, but that's a huge hit to take. So that's why we're in the fiscal crisis that we are right now.
I'm so glad that you touched on that, because I don't want this to be the Jay show, but what I'm going to tell you is I didn't like it when Quinn's tax increase went in. I mean, I can't say that I liked it,
No, nobody likes paying taxes.
I also can't honestly tell you that I had trouble paying my bills or living my life or anything with the increased tax rate. And then when the rate went away, it's not like I suddenly felt rich, okay? And I'm just speaking personally, and it'll be interesting to see what our audience says about this, but I'm more unnerved by every other day I'm hearing that retirement homes aren't get their money, or that my daughter works at a daycare center, and a lot of these people need vouchers in order to afford the daycare. I mean, you get somebody who's only making $400, $500 a week. It's hard to pay $130 a week for childcare, and there are people that aren't able to put their kids in childcare. Where are they going? Are they going to welfare now? I mean, it just seems. I'm so unnerved by all of that there isn't money for rail.
Child care never used to be a political football. It was part of the Welfare to Work initiative that was back in the mid-90s and under President Clinton. It was a way for people to transition from government assistance to the workforce because they realized that missing component was child care, having a safe place for your child to be while you were able to work. And it never was a political football. It was always a bipartisan issue. Republicans and Democrats always agreed this is something we need to maintain. Something that's changed in Springfield. It's become a political foodball, and the new administration has changed the eligibility requirements, and that's separate from our budget debate. The new administration has unilaterally changed the eligibility requirements for parents who will be able to get help with their child care costs. So
they reduce the amount.
Now
really poor now.
People who would make minimum wage, I think, no longer qualify for child care services. And so what this does is puts pressure on the parent. Do I continue working, or do I stay home and because I can't afford child care? What's that do to our economy? what's that to do to businesses and their productivity? If you have an employee who can't be at work and it's been trained by the employer, that's not good for business either. That's not good for the economy. But I think it's symptomatic of what we're dealing with in Springfield. More things have become political footballs that weren't in the past. And I think childcare is a perfect example of how it's really frustrating that there are important programs that actually save the state money, are good for the economy, good for business like childcare, or for example, services that keep seniors in their homes, or those who have disabilities in their homes.
Right.
If those services
So
are discontinued,
visiting nurse can come and such. Right?
they're going to go to an institution, a nursing home, which is far more expensive for the state to care for. So there's an expression, penny wise, pound foolish. A lot of the programs that aren't being funded fit in that category. We may save some money initially by not providing those services, but if people end up in nursing homes, institutions, incarcerated, or jailed because teens, for example, don't have after-school programs, don't get the mentoring they need, it's going to cost the state much more money down the road. And sometimes when we talk about the budget and balancing the budget and we talk about where we need to be fiscally, you need to think long-term as well. A lot of these programs save the state money, and I think we need to take that in consideration as far as how we're going to get through our budget crisis.
When it comes to the child care thing, that's not an abstract thing. My daughter works at a child care place. She works there part-time. She loves the kids, just loves them. And, but their enrollment is down because there are people that just can't drop their kids off. And these are folks that I'm sure are having difficulties now going to work.
Yeah,
I'm sure they are. And these are people that are making, oh gosh, they're making $12, maybe $14 an hour, which, hell, that's not all the money in the world, but that's out there making it happen. But if you can't send your kid to childcare while you go to work, you can't go to work. Either that or else you're gonna lock your kid in the house with a bowl of Cheerios or something? I mean, you have to make choices between being a responsible parent and, I don't know.
Or likely you're not going to work and you're going to go on a government assistance program.
That's exactly what all these folks are doing. That's exactly what's happening. So, I don't know, I guess the moral of that story is that I feel more ill at ease now after getting that wonderful tax break than I did when I was paying the higher tax rate, which I didn't like necessarily. I mean, I wasn't drinking St. Andrew's beer at that point. I was drinking Killian's, because I couldn't afford it. But that's about as much as it affected my life. But I look out here now, and it's really scary.
There are a lot of nonprofits for a number of different reasons, because of court orders, consent decrees, and actually bills Governor Browner has signed. 90% of the budget is being paid for. It's going out the door. Government services are being provided. The governor decided to go to court to make sure state employees were being paid, which is fine.
Mm-hmm.
People can continue to get state government services. But 10% of the budget that's not being funded are for nonprofit providers. And those nonprofit providers really provide the programs for the state regarding human services, child care.
Like the child care.
And because they're part of the 10% that are not being funded by the state, they're in danger over the next few weeks, few months of going out of business. And the state of Illinois has set up this infrastructure through these nonprofits.
That depends on them.
That depends on them. And so if they start going out of business, you're going to see that structure crumble quickly. And you can't build that back up. I mean, because good people who are dedicated, they're educated,
they move on.
They move on. They've got to find ways to make a living. And if and when that budget situation is resolved, you don't build up that infrastructure that the state relies on so heavily to provide some very needed programs that quickly. So, the ramifications are great.
Yeah.
People, if they haven't already, will be hurt, or even more seriously, people can die. I mean, that's the ramifications of what we're dealing with by not having a budget agreement. And, I understand the frustration. People want to point fingers and play the blame game. That doesn't get us anywhere. At the end of the day, we have divided government. We have a Republican governor, we have a Democratic-controlled General Assembly. Neither side is going to get everything they want. You've got to find a compromise. You've got to find middle ground, or else nothing's going to accomplish, and that's the situation right now. So I understand the frustration, because people just want to know, why aren't you doing your jobs? And you're right. You know, the bottom line is, you know, we need to agree on a budget and make sure important services are funded. So it's frustrating. And at some point, there's got to be a will to find that middle ground. So it doesn't mean that I'm going to agree with everything that Governor Rauner is putting out there, but you still need to find a way to compromise and come together, because when you have divided government, you've got to make that work.